In the quiet hills of southern China, travelers once spoke of a ruined temple. Its courtyards were overgrown, its painted beams fading into shadow, and whispers of ghosts clung to its walls. But one desperate scholar, with nowhere else to go, stepped inside. What he found there would take him further than he ever imagined, into mysteries that even he could not explain. But before we begin, if you're drawn to stories with mystery, meaning, and the otherworldly, to legends passed down as truth, then this is the channel for you. I share new stories each week, drawn from folklore, forgotten history, and strange events that linger at the edge of belief. So tap the like button and subscribe with all notifications on so you never miss what's next. Let's begin. In the late Ming Dynasty, there was a scholar by the name of Ning Chen. Now, he left his home in the south and headed towards the capital. So he went across rivers and mountains, and he journeyed northward to sit for the imperial exams. Now, Ning was not wealthy, but he was known for his generosity and his strict sense of integrity. Now, he believed that if he passed, he could serve the realm with honor. Unfortunately, by the time he reached the city of Jinhua, which was also in the southern part of China, he had run out of money. So he searched and he found work copying documents and letters for a local merchant. So this job was suited for him because he was a scholar, and he only planned to stay a couple weeks, just enough to earn enough money to then be able to travel to the capital. Now, the merchant told him that there are some inns around, but if he really wanted to save on money, he should go to the abandoned temple on the outskirts of the city, since it was abandoned and nobody was there and it didn't cost anything. Although sometimes there were travelers who would go there and they would stay there. This was kind of a thing that people knew about. So when Ning arrived, he saw that the temple was silent and there was these courtyards and they had all this grass that was overgrown. You could tell that monks had not been there for a while. But there was a single traveler who was already there. It was a man with a broad forehead, sharp eyes, but he had a quiet confidence. He introduced himself as Yan Chixia, a wandering swordsman. Now, as they spoke, the swordsman described the remote mountain home where he lived and how he came here looking for work. Ning nodded, saying that he heard of the place and knew the general area, though he had never ventured that deep into the mountains himself. They shared tea, spoke under the moonlight, and though they were strangers, a subtle trust was born. Now, that night at the temple, Ning lay awake. The wind was whistling through broken shutters, and just from beyond the north courtyard, he heard voices. He heard a woman speaking softly. He also caught the faint sound of other travelers kind of arriving late and settling in. He could hear their footsteps and murmurs carrying through the temple's empty halls. And one name that he heard again and again was Xiao Qian, Xiao Qian. Before long, as he lied by himself in a room that he found, a figure entered his chamber. She was young, dressed in pale silk, and her beauty was framed by the flicker of his oil lamp. She spoke gently, offering him gold, and asked if she could stay the night. Ning refused. I am a scholar, he said firmly. I will not dishonor myself. Her eyes got dark, and then with a bitter smile, she slipped back into the shadows. The next morning, another candidate who was on his way to take the imperial exam was also lodging in the temple with his servant, and both were found dead. Now, both bodies were pale, cold, and each had a single puncture wound in the sole of their feet. Ning shuddered when he heard this. The encounter that he had the night before, that was no dream. He went and asked the swordsman, Yan. He listened and kind of nodded, and then Yan said, "This temple is no place for the living. Ghosts and demons feed here. But they didn't have any money. Now, neither Ning nor the other travelers could go to the capital, and they didn't even have enough money to return home. So they had no choice. They had to stay in the temple, hoping to survive through the night. Now, the following night, the young woman returned to his room, but this time her tone was desperate. She confessed. She said that her name was Xiao Qian, and she had actually died at 18, struck down by illness after being abandoned at the temple gates by relatives seeking divine aid. When her soul drifted unburied in the ruined grounds, the ancient demons that haunted the place seized her spirit. These were old creatures who long ago poisoned the monks' hearts and brought ruin upon the temple. And now they bound her to their will. To serve the demons, she must seduce travelers, for only while entranced by her beauty could the demons feed. Now, the false gold she offered was no treasure. It had been transformed by the demons from the bones of the dead. And as she seduced men, the demons would pierce their feet, draining blood unnoticed until they were dry and lifeless. She whispered that she had no way of escaping this haunting on her own. She begged Ning for deliverance. Beneath the white poplar tree outside the temple, where crows nest, my bones lie unburied. Find them, lay me to rest. At this point, Ning's heart wavered. Well, is this trickery? Or is this an actual cry for salvation? He couldn't figure it out. So that night, as he was wrestling with this doubt, he witnessed something that he couldn't quite believe. So he was hanging out in the swordsman's room, and a box on his table sprang open, and from within shot a thin, gleaming blade of light, a flying sword circling the rafters before darting outside into the darkness. A shriek echoed in the courtyard, then silence. And as the sword returned, Yan caught it midair. He smiled at Ning. I am a Taoist swordsman, he said. I've kept my arts hidden, for most men cannot be trusted with such knowledge. But you, your steadfastness in the face of temptation, and your compassion for the girl's plight, show me you are different. Here, take this. He handed Ning a weathered leather sword case. Ning looked at it and frowned. There's no sword inside. The swordsman said that the demons don't know that. They only sense the power that clings to the case. Hang this where you sleep. No demon will dare approach you. So Ning did that, and he slept somewhat peacefully through the night, although he heard other commotion going out amongst the other travelers. But he didn't dare get out of his bed and look. He just stayed in his room. Now, at dawn, when he got up, he went outside and he followed the flight of crows until at last they all gathered atop this tall poplar tree. So the crows were circling and cawing, and at its roots, he unearthed Xiao Qian's bones. Now, at this point, he had made a little bit of money from the merchant, not enough to go to the capital, but enough to return home. So he picked up the bones, got his bag, put them in his bag, and started the journey home. Now, when he finally got home, beneath his own library, he buried the bones with care, burning incense and bowing low. So the next day, after he woke up, Xiao Qian appeared, no longer as a phantom, but in daylight. Her form solid, her gratitude endless, and Ning, stunned to see her in the flesh and not a wisp of a spirit, was left bewildered. He was scarcely able to believe that the ghostly figure who had once come to him by moonlight now stood before him in the flesh. So he then told his parents that this was a friend. He had to make up this story, and they got a bed for her in the house. But that night, even with the sword case hanging outside the main door of the house, Ning and Xiao Qian could still hear demons and weird sounds from a distance, sometimes scratching at windows and circling the house. So at that point, they realized that this sword case was barely keeping these demons at bay, and the curse itself was not broken. Now, they realized that they needed to return to the temple to finish the demons for good, but neither of them had any idea of how to do that. So, they set out on the road seeking Yen, the swordsman. Now, they traveled for days, and each day they could feel the presence of the demon's minions pressing closer on their trail, whispers and shadows at their steps. Exhausted and uneasy, they pressed onward until, at last, they tracked down Yen's mountain home. When the swordsman heard that the demons still pursued Xiao Qian, and the sword case was no longer enough, he agreed to return with them. Together, they journeyed back to the ruined temple. There, in the moonlit ruins, demons poured forth in shifting shapes, first as snarling beasts, then twisting into ghastly human forms, and finally rising as towering shadows that clawed at the night sky. Yen's sword blazed as he cut through wave after wave, his blade flashing arcs of light that sheared the darkness. But each strike left him more wounded, claw marks burning across his arm, blood soaking his robe. At that moment, Xiao Qian's body began to glow, her human guise melting away as pale light unfurled behind her, her hair flowing like a silver river, and her eyes shining with unearthly fire. She was not of the angelic realm, yet clearly no mortal either. In her true fairy form, she rushed to Yen's side again and again, chanting spells of protection and casting shimmering barriers of green and gold that gave him moments to breathe. Now, Ning, utterly shocked, could barely comprehend what he was looking at. The woman he had buried, now revealed as a celestial being wielding power beyond anything he had known. Still, the demons pressed in, and the temple shook with cries of battle. At last, one demon, larger than the rest, surged forward, his body writhing like a storm of shadows. Yen gathered his strength, his sword blazing like a sun. With a roar, he drove it straight into the monster's chest. The demon shrieked as its form unraveled, collapsing into smoke and fire. The final blow shattered the night, light flooded the ruins, and the darkness was gone. At last, Yen struck down the final demon, but he fell, mortally wounded. Struggling for breath, he turned to Ning and Xiao Qian. "I secretly followed you home," he whispered. "After you buried her bones, I could see her soul was unlike others, something different, something that longed for rebirth. So I performed the hidden Taoist rites. It was those powers that brought her back. Only now do I see that she is no ghost, but a fairy spirit long enslaved by the demons. That is why they pursued her so fiercely." Xiao Qian fell to her knees beside him, light flickering around her, trying desperately to heal him with her magic. But though her power could shield him somewhat in battle, it was not strong enough to save him from death. Tears blurred Ning's eyes as he realized the swordsman's end had come. Yet Yen's sacrifice was not the end. As his breath faded, Xiao Qian revealed a small gourd, whispering incantations taught to her in her youth. She drew in the departing shimmer of Yen's soul before it could dissolve into the night. The vessel glowed faintly, warm in her hands, and she swore to guard it. Xiao Qian and Ning wed the following spring, and in time, Ning passed the imperial exam, rising to high office. Together, they rebuilt the temple with their wealth, inviting monks to return and chant within its halls. Only then, standing in the incense smoke of the rededicated shrine, did Xiao Qian unseal the gourd. Light streamed forth, and Yen's spirit emerged smiling, now a guardian bound to watch over the temple and protect it from demons. What began in a ruin of a temple ended in love, sacrifice, and the triumph of light over shadow. We see how compassion and courage can free even the most lost soul, and that true virtue often lies in protecting others at great cost. Evil may bind and corrupt, but loyalty, love, and selflessness restore harmony and light. If you'd like to see more stories like this, please help me grow the channel by liking the video, make sure you're subscribed with all notifications on, and leave a comment. And now, Jared Tells Tales YouTube memberships are available. Members get early access to stories and special members-only videos. You can also join my free newsletter at jaredmadsen.com for behind-the-scenes insights and extra content. But your journey today doesn't have to end here. Step into the full library for every tale I've ever told here, or wander deeper into the haunted pages of strange tales from a Chinese studio. Cross over into Japan's shadowed legends, or sail into Persia's enchanted world of 1001 Nights. Thanks for watching, and remember, every tale is a doorway to another world. I'll see you in the next story.